I've worked really hard to gain the respect and earn my place in this industry. I did have imposter syndrome.
I don't feel imposter syndrome.
It's been hard work. I've always had to work hard. Nothing's come easy.
Oh my gosh, I work so hard and I'm still working hard.
Shut up and don't say anything at all. I've always had to work hard. Nothing's come easy. I've been told no so many times, but every time I've been knocked, I've bounced back up.
I do not think about failing. No.
Meghan keeps chasing the kind of respect Victoria Beckham already locked down years ago, and that's where the real gap starts showing. Victoria didn't wake up one morning with people suddenly praising her. She went through decades of brutal media attention, nasty headlines, and endless public judgment before people finally changed their opinion about her.
I've had to learn along the way, educate myself later on in life. I don't pretend to know everything, and I think that is key.
Back in the Spice Girls days, she was constantly painted as the cold one or the untouchable diva. For years, people mocked her facial expressions, her attitude, even the way she dressed. But instead of jumping from one image to another, trying to win everybody over, Victoria stayed consistent and built her fashion brand piece by piece until people had no choice but to take her seriously.
I've never gone into this thinking I know everything. I'm the best at everything. You know, I've been a sponge over the years and really enjoyed learning from the best people in the industry.
Then there's Meghan, who always seems to be trying to sell a brand new version of herself every time the spotlight shifts. One moment she's presenting herself as a Hollywood figure, then suddenly it's podcasts, luxury lifestyle content, cooking, wellness, inspirational talks, and polished social media style branding. Critics keep saying it feels less natural and more like somebody constantly trying to create the perfect public image.
You just have to trust your gut, and that's what I've been doing. And to trust your gut. I think that's so key. No, I feel confident in what I've been dreaming up for so long. I feel confident.
That's why so many people compare her to Victoria and immediately notice the difference in how both women handle fame and criticism. What makes it even more interesting is how similar their lives look on paper. Both married hugely famous men, both entered the world of luxury branding, both use Netflix to expand their public image.
I finally have an incredible team of people with an enormous amount of experience in the industry. You've got to have the right team around you to make that a success. So what I don't know, I surround myself with fantastic people that do.
But while Victoria's projects made audiences warm up to her personality, Meghan's projects often end up creating more online arguments than support. And honestly, the biggest reason might be simple. Victoria spent years letting her work speak first, while Meghan often looks like she's trying to convince people before they've fully bought into the brand. One of these women knows how to listen, learn, and grow, while the other often comes across like she already believes she's the smartest person in every room.
Because I know that I'm a great friend. And I know the kind of mom I am, and I know the kind of human being I am, and I know how I show up.
That difference alone completely changes how the public reacts to them. Victoria Beckham has never acted like she has every answer figured out. Even after decades of fame and success, she still works closely with experts, creative teams, and professionals who bring skills she openly respects. She understands that building a strong brand takes teamwork, not just one person demanding all the attention. That's a huge reason why people find Victoria more relatable now than they did years ago.
You know, people had preconceptions because of that, because I didn't have a traditional fashion training.
When she speaks in interviews, you can hear how often she says we instead of constantly saying I or me. She gives credit to the people around her and makes it clear that her success didn't happen alone. Whether it's her fashion team, business partners, or family support system, Victoria never tries to act like she built an empire completely by herself. That kind of attitude makes people respect her more because it feels grounded and genuine. Now compare that with Meghan, where critics constantly point out how heavily the focus seems centered on herself, her image, and her personal story. Fair or not, many people feel like every project somehow circles back to Meghan being the main focus at all times. That's also why online conversations about her often include accusations of narcissistic behavior, with critics arguing that she appears to crave admiration, validation, and non-stop public attention. Victoria Beckham's success story looks glamorous now, but getting there was far from easy.
You know, there was a lot of raised eyebrows, or those that raised their eyebrows. Pop star who's married to a footballer, really going to do a clothing line?
For years, people refused to take her seriously because they already had fixed opinions about her from the Spice Girls era. A lot of critics assumed she was just another celebrity trying to cash in on fame without having any real talent behind the scenes. She had to fight hard to prove she was more than just a pop culture figure standing next to famous people. Every collection, every business move, and every fashion show came with heavy criticism and people waiting for her to fail. What helped Victoria stand out was the fact that she never acted like she knew everything already. She listened carefully to experienced people around her, accepted advice, learnt from mistakes, and kept improving over time. That level of self-awareness made a huge difference. She understood her strengths, but she also understood her weak spots. And instead of pretending to be perfect, she asked questions and learned from professionals who knew more than she did. That actually shows confidence, not weakness.
I know what I know, but I really know what I don't know. I don't pretend to know everything. And I think that is key. So what I don't know, I surround myself with fantastic people that do.
People who are truly secure in themselves don't feel the need to act like experts in every single topic. And despite all the pressure, Victoria focused on mastering one lane instead of trying to dominate 10 different industries at once. Fashion became her main focus, and she spent years building credibility there until people finally respected her work. She never acted like marrying David Beckham automatically guaranteed success or public trust. She understood that fame might open doors, but it would never force people to buy products or genuinely respect her brand. That's why her success feels earned to a lot of people, because she spent years proving herself instead of expecting instant admiration. That's the thing. Real success doesn't magically appear overnight just because somebody has fame or powerful connections.
It's been hard work, and there's been ups and there's been downs, but I never expected it to be any different. I never expected this to be easy. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it.
A lot of critics say Meghan approaches new projects like she's already the top expert before, fully proving herself in those spaces. 1 minute it's podcasting, then lifestyle branding, cooking, fashion, wellness, luxury products. The list keeps getting longer. Ambition itself isn't the issue. Nobody can deny Meghan is ambitious. The bigger criticism is that she often seems to want instant credibility without going through the long process of building trust step by step. To many people watching from the outside, it can sometimes feel like Meghan expects the audience to immediately admire every project simply because her name is attached to it. But public respect doesn't work like a same-day delivery order where admiration just shows up automatically. Trust usually comes from years of consistency, experience, failures, lessons, and proving yourself over time. That's something Victoria Beckham seemed to understand very early on. She knew people were skeptical of her, and instead of demanding instant acceptance, she kept working until critics slowly changed their minds. And honestly, Victoria had plenty of people doubting her too. Back then, many in the fashion world looked at her and only saw posh Spice, or the wife of football superstar David Beckham. A lot of industry insiders questioned whether she had any real design talent at all.
Oh my gosh, I worked so hard. And I'm still working hard, right? The moment that everything sells out, it doesn't mean that we're done.
Yeah, it means we're working on replenishment. What are the next SKUs? What's the next tranche of products? What's the timing on that? And writing the newsletters, writing the social media captions, and making sure that all that.
Some people assumed her brand would disappear quickly because they thought she was just another celebrity, experimenting with fashion for attention. The pressure on her was huge, and the criticism was relentless. But Victoria never acted like success was guaranteed. She openly talked about how difficult it was to earn credibility in such a tough industry. Instead of pretending everything came naturally, she acknowledged the struggle, the rejection, and the learning process behind the scenes. That honesty made people respect her journey more, because audiences tend to connect with people who admit they had to work for their success, instead of acting entitled to it from day one. Victoria Beckham understood something very important from the beginning. Respect is not something people hand out for free just because you're connected to somebody famous. Being married to David Beckham may have brought attention, but she knew attention and credibility were two completely different things. That's why she never walked into the fashion world expecting instant praise or automatic success. In fact, she fully expected criticism, skepticism, and people doubting whether she belonged there at all. Instead of acting offended by that reality, she accepted it and kept pushing forward anyway. What also makes Victoria stand out is how openly she talks about her struggles and mistakes. She's admitted in interviews that her business had difficult years and financial setbacks while she was trying to build her fashion brand. For nearly 2 decades, there were constant headlines questioning whether her company would survive. But she stayed committed, kept learning, adjusted where necessary, and slowly earned respect through persistence. That honesty makes her feel far more relatable because people connect with someone who admits the journey was messy, instead of pretending everything was perfect from day one.
And it's taken 20 years for me to have the confidence, literally standing on my own and kids just picking up Coke cans from puddles and throwing them at me. I mean, I was physically and mentally really bullied at school, and I was ashamed, embarrassed. And so I didn't tell anybody.
Then critics look at Meghan and see the complete opposite image being presented. According to the polished public narrative surrounding her projects, everything appears smooth, glamorous, and instantly successful. Products launch, and suddenly headlines claim they're selling out immediately. Every venture looks perfectly curated, perfectly timed, and effortlessly profitable. That's why some people struggle to connect with it, because real business success usually involves setbacks, mistakes, stress, uncertainty, and long periods of trial and error behind the scenes. And that's the question critics keep asking: what exactly is Meghan's strongest skill or expertise supposed to be? Building a successful business normally takes years of consistency, failures, learning experiences, and rebuilding after things go wrong. Most entrepreneurs talk openly about sacrifices, sleepless nights, and difficult lessons learned along the way. But Meghan's public image often comes across as though success simply appears naturally around her, without much visible struggle at all. And that contrast is exactly why so many online debates keep following her projects everywhere. According to critics, Meghan tries to present herself as someone who can instantly master absolutely everything she touches. Acting, podcasting, lifestyle branding, cooking, wellness, luxury products, every new project arrives with this polished image that makes it seem like success just happens naturally for her.
You know, I've been in the red for a long, long time. I'm in the black. We're profitable. I don't want to go back there.
1 minute she's discussing food and hosting lifestyle content. The next she's promoting inspirational ideas, creative products, or media ventures like she's been an expert in those industries forever. That's why online jokes about her doing it all keep spreading everywhere. People sarcastically act like she could probably teach a masterclass on becoming an overnight expert in every possible category. And then comes the criticism that follows her constantly, the belief that the image feels too carefully manufactured instead of naturally earned. Some critics argue that Meghan's branding often looks more focused on appearing impressive than openly showing the difficult process behind building experience and credibility. Fair or unfair, that perception keeps fueling conversations online because audiences usually connect more with people who admit flaws, failures, and uncertainty instead of appearing polished all the time.
Anything that you would do differently? Yes, I would ask people to tell the truth. Yes, I would ask people to tell the truth.
That's where many people compare her to Victoria Beckham again. Victoria has never been afraid to admit when things were difficult professionally or personally. She's spoken openly about setbacks, harsh criticism, and the pressure she faced while trying to build her fashion brand. Instead of pretending everything came easy, she allowed people to see moments of vulnerability. And ironically, that honesty made audiences trust her more. People tend to respect public figures who can acknowledge mistakes and growth without making themselves look perfect every second. Critics also point out that Victoria usually shares those struggles in a grounded way, rather than turning every hardship into a dramatic public performance. Her openness often feels connected to personal growth and resilience, instead of demanding sympathy from the audience. Meanwhile, Meghan continues to divide public opinion because some people genuinely sympathize with the pressure and scrutiny she's faced, while others remain skeptical due to past interviews, public contradictions, and ongoing media controversies surrounding her image. That split reaction is a huge reason why conversations about Meghan online always become so heated. Some viewers fully believe her side of the story, while others question how authentic the overall narrative really is. And honestly, if people disagree with this, that's completely fine. Meghan still has plenty of loyal supporters who genuinely admire her, and everyone sees these situations differently. But for a lot of critics, the biggest issue isn't ambition or even controversy. It's the constant feeling of dissatisfaction and complaint, despite having access to so many opportunities most people could only dream about. Fame, wealth, global attention, powerful connections, media platforms, luxury lifestyles, Meghan entered a world filled with advantages and influence. That's why some people struggle to understand why her public image so often centers around conflict, frustration, and broken relationships instead of gratitude for everything she gained along the way. Critics especially focus on the fact that Meghan became distant from both sides of her extended family and later stepped away from royal duties as well.
For them to be able to look back and go, oh my gosh, she has loved us so much.
To supporters, those decisions may have been necessary for personal reasons and protecting her peace. But to critics, it created the impression of somebody constantly cutting ties whenever relationships become difficult or criticism appears. That contrast becomes even stronger when people compare her attitude to Victoria Beckham's public image, because Victoria often speaks with appreciation toward the people who supported her journey, even during difficult periods of fame and pressure. And this next comparison really stands out when both women are asked a very simple question: if you could do things differently, what would you change? Victoria openly talks about mistakes she made throughout her career and admits there are things she would absolutely handle differently now. That kind of honesty usually makes public figures feel more human, because audiences naturally trust people who can admit imperfection and growth over time. Meanwhile, Meghan's critics argue that she rarely accepts responsibility for anything publicly, and instead frames most conflicts around outside forces working against her. Whether it's the media, royal institutions, critics, former staff, or public opinion, many people feel the blame is almost always directed outward instead of inward. Supporters would argue she's simply defending herself against unfair treatment, while critics see a pattern of avoiding accountability altogether. And that's exactly why the accusations of narcissism keep following her online, because some viewers believe she presents herself as constantly surrounded by people who are supposedly the problem, while she remains the misunderstood victim at the center of every conflict. Critics often say one major reason Meghan receives so much backlash is because she appears extremely uncomfortable with criticism. The argument people make is that whenever negative reactions happen, the response rarely feels like reflection or accountability. Instead, it often turns into explanations about unfair treatment, toxic environments, or people supposedly misunderstanding her intentions. That's why online debates around Meghan become so intense. Some viewers sympathize with her completely, while others feel she struggles to admit flaws or personal mistakes in public. And honestly, the jokes online never stop either. Some critics sarcastically say that if somebody held a mirror up to Meghan for self-reflection, the next thing you know, there'd be a luxury version of that mirror featured in a lifestyle collection with a polished brand story attached to it. That kind of humour spreads because people feel her public image is heavily centred around presentation, branding, and carefully managed appearances. Now compare that with Victoria Beckham, who surprised a lot of people over the years by becoming far more self-aware and funny than the public originally expected. Even though she spent decades being labelled the Ice Queen, people slowly started seeing a completely different side of her personality. She jokes about herself, laughs at old public moments, and doesn't seem terrified of looking awkward or imperfect. That ability to laugh at herself made audiences warm up to her in a major way, because humour and self-awareness usually make celebrities feel more relatable and genuine. Then there's the question of authenticity. Meghan often talks publicly about happiness, positivity, and living with joy, but critics argue that something about her public image still feels overly polished or emotionally controlled. Fair or unfair, some viewers say her smiles and appearances can come across as carefully staged rather than naturally relaxed. Meanwhile, Victoria's personality now feels more effortless to many people because she appears comfortable enough to embrace both her strengths and flaws publicly. Another huge contrast people point out is loyalty and long-term stability. Victoria and David Beckham have been together for around 30 years, despite non-stop media pressure, public rumours, and celebrity scrutiny. That consistency became a major part of how audiences view Victoria's character and personal life. That kind of long-lasting relationship earns respect from a lot of people because it shows commitment, loyalty, and the ability to survive pressure together. Victoria and David Beckham have spent decades dealing with fame, rumours, non-stop headlines, and public scrutiny, yet they've stayed united through all of it. They built a family together, raised 4 children, and continued supporting each other's careers along the way. Whether people love celebrities or not, many still admire couples who manage to stay together while living under that level of constant attention and pressure. And there's another interesting contrast people point out when both women speak about their children and what they hope for their future. Victoria usually talks about wanting her kids to be grounded, hardworking, kind, and genuinely happy in life. Her focus often sounds centered on values, discipline, and giving them the tools to build their own paths instead of depending on fame alone. Meanwhile, critics joke that when Meghan talks about motherhood, the conversation often circles back toward herself and her emotional connection to everything. That's why some online commentators sarcastically describe it as me, myself, and Meghan being the center of the narrative again. Supporters would probably see that as a mother expressing love openly, while critics see it as another example of her making herself the emotional focus of every discussion. Of course, for a lot of critics, everything somehow always circles back to Meghan herself. And honestly, even people who aren't parents can probably agree on one simple thing. Most people just want their children to grow up healthy, happy, secure, and able to build a good life for themselves. That's usually what matters most at the end of the day. So when people compare Victoria Beckham and Meghan Markle side by side, the conversation becomes less about fame, glamour, titles, luxury lifestyles, or perfect public images, and more about how each woman comes across underneath all of that attention. When you strip everything else away, many people see Victoria as someone who slowly earned public respect through years of pressure, criticism, setbacks, and non-stop hard work. She didn't escape mistakes or difficult moments, but she kept going, stayed disciplined, learned from failures, and built credibility over time. That journey made her feel more relatable and grounded to a lot of audiences. Meanwhile, Meghan continues to divide opinion everywhere she goes. Supporters see confidence, ambition, and independence, while critics see somebody constantly trying to convince the public to admire her, trust her, and accept every new version of her brand. And that's really where the debate keeps growing online. But now I want to hear from you. Which woman do you think comes across as more genuine and relatable, Victoria or Meghan? Drop your opinion down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next discussion.